Your taxi ride in Grand Forks is likely to soon get a bit more expensive. Tonight, the Committee of the Whole approved a request from Grand Forks 2 taxi companies to raise their minimum fare to $10. Here's their discussion on that before approving the request.
City Council has in ordinance currently the maximum rates that taxi operators are allowed to charge their customers. The last time that was updated was in 2008. Given the current economy and the price of gas, along with labor issues and wanting to be fair to their employees, the two taxi company owners have approached the city about adjusting the fares and making an increase so that they can cover their costs and stay in business. We've done a little bit of analysis that's attached in your staff report. I did over the weekend receive information on Williston, and they're very similar to the others. They're a $5.50 base fare and 55 cents per 0.2 mile. But bringing it forward for your consideration, the taxi companies are currently looking to change from our current rates, which are $3 for the first eighth of a mile and 30 cents for each successive eighth of a mile, to $6 for the first eighth of a mile, and then 50 cents for each additional eighth of a mile, and then further to add the ability for them to include a $10 minimum fare. What we're hearing from the companies is that they have a lot of very short fares, sometimes resulting in only a few blocks to get someone from point A to a medical appointment or from one establishment to another. And when they're making all those short trips, it's a lot of extra wear and tear on their vehicles, and they're just not getting enough revenue to cover their costs of operation. So we agreed to bring this forward so you guys could consider it. Again, the fares that we currently set are maximum, so they could always charge less than that. But at this time, that's the fare they feel that they need to be able to operate in the city.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Lundmark? Mr. Weigel?
I guess I would just, and maybe this is more for Mr. Gosted, but I'm just kind of curious why we're limiting a business and what they can charge somebody. We don't limit Uber or Lyft or other rideshare services, so I guess I would just wonder why we're limiting a business on what they can charge somebody for their services.
Mr. Gosted?
I can't answer as to why, other than what Ms. Lundmark just explained, is that when there's a short, they can't charge the minimum fee can't be more than $10, which means, if it's a short drive, they can't charge $15 for be limited to 10. I think that's the only rationale I can consider.
Would we have to change our ordinance if we wanted to remove the minimums, the maximums, anything in between, or would we just I guess I'm not sure what our city ordinance says
for that, and that's what's being proposed. Is a change. It talks about one of the changes to add is that the maximum minimum fare is limited to $10.
Sounds good. I guess I would leave it open to other council members. I don't see the reason why we limit a business and what they can charge. We don't do it to Uber or Lyft. I would be in favor of allowing their business to operate freely like we do any other business in Grand Forks.
But Mr. Weigel, I understand and appreciate what you're saying. I think the reason, perhaps I'm wrong, but I think the reason that cities provide maximums and limitations is because of the transparency and cost. Because they're using a meter, and so you jump in and you don't know how much it's going to cost you until you get to your destination, right? And so versus with Lyft and Uber, they tell you in advance what it's going to cost you. And so I think probably in the past there have been situations where taxi companies have taken advantage of people, and so then cities have decided to regulate it. I'm okay I'm 100%. If you decide and you want to advocate for getting rid of these, I would probably go along with it, knowing that in today's day and age, if the taxi companies were trying to take or were taking advantage of people, they probably, with today's social media and everything else, everyone would know, and very quickly that company would either have to change their practices or they would go out of business, I would assume. So, again, I'm okay with whatever you're suggesting for the future. I will note that I think there's Mr. Gosted in the ordinance. There is a typo when after the change from $3 to $6, it says the first 1/8, but in parentheses you have 1/2. So I did notice that earlier.
Yeah, that's actually in the original.
Yeah, right.
So we'll have to make that modification.
I understand.
Yeah.
So anyway, other comments or thoughts? Yes, Ms. Lundmark?
I was just going to point out that there are some cities in a couple of our cities where they don't regulate fares at all. They require that the cab companies submit to the city a list of what their rates will be for the upcoming year when they submit their renewal. So that way there's some somewhat oversight on the part of the city. So if someone feels they're not being treated fairly, they can contact the city and verify that what they were charged is what the company says they're going to do business for. So that's kind of another step down from the city actually setting rates. But
Mr. Weber, yes, sir?
Like President Sandy, I find Councilor Rep. Weigel's arguments to, have some certainly validity, right? I drove cab for a while. I hated those short runs. They were terrible, and they tended to be low tippers as well. So it was the crummiest kind of fare. But I also remember that these tended to be low-income individuals who often needed almost an emergency kind of situation, or they'd had too much to drink, and rather than going out on the road, they caught a ride. And so I think that there's some aspect of public service to running a taxi company. The comparison with Lyft and Uber is another compelling part of your argument, but I think that there's an historic reason for these kinds of caps. And I'd hate to be in a situation where suddenly someone at 2:30 in the morning is needing a ride, and they're being charged much more than the $10. So I'd be inclined to stay with the caps. And it sounds like what I was hearing when you were saying this is I was thinking, why would they want to charge that much? They're going to hurt their business. But that's for them to set. But I think that there's some reason for having some sort of limit. Yeah. Thanks.
Mr. Kavami?
Yeah, I disagree that, it seems like there shouldn't be a limit, but if they're willing to accept a limit, in fact, they're asking for an increase but not an abolishment, then I feel like let's give them what they're asking for if it seems reasonable. But I do agree that I feel like you'll just hop on Uber if they charge too much, but not everybody has the ability to do that. So,
Ms. Ma?
I just wanted to mention that after meeting with Student Senate last week, it was noted to me, which I haven't taken advantage of it in Grand Forks, but students were saying that they can't get Uber and Lyft very easily, and that even sometimes with pricing and lack of availability or maybe surge pricing, it's $60 to get across town or something like that. So, certainly not being in the business, I'm not exactly sure what taxi cab drivers are seeing, but they were noting to me that they had a hard time getting those other services. So, I think we need to make sure we have transportation options for people who need them as well.
So I'll move approval of the recommended
Moved by
the staff
Weber.
recommendation.
Is there a second? Second by Kavami. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Weigel dissents. Thank you.